Welcome back to Property Matters here on Dublin South FM, and with myself, Carol Talon, and Brian Fox. You can contact us on Twitter at iPropertyRadio or email hello@iPropertyRadio.com. Now, we have returning guests to the show today. I'm joined by Ian Thompson and Ikenna Nweke of client or commercial tenant engagement app and office app. Guys, you're very welcome. We spoke previously, so just for people maybe who aren't familiar, you might just remind us of what Office App does.
Carol, first of all, thank you so much for having us back. We thought we blew our chances the first time, but we obviously did something well to be invited the second time around. And so what we are is we're a smart office platform. And what we do in essence is integrate with lots of different systems within the building, whether it's access control, whether it's parking sensors, we're bringing together community, where all via the one platform, they're allowing the user to really interface and do everything they need to do within the office environment in a very simple and easy to use platform. And then at the back end, having all that data, all that lovely data for landlords and corporates to really get a real understanding of how their employees, how their tenants are really interfacing with their building environment. And so they can tailor it in such a way. And that's both from a physical environment and changing the actual look and feel of the open spaces and so on and so forth, or even from a soft perspective in terms of some of the services offered within the building or within the campus.
Okay, one of the things that I'm finding really exciting at the moment, we've been doing the show for 3 years, but I've been involved through proptech Ireland for about 5 years, and we were always talking about the potential, what the potential for the technology to do, and one of the really exciting things, if exciting is indeed the right word for a crisis, over the past 18 months, the industry has really woken up to technology because it was needed to solve problems. So talk to me about how Office App has transitioned over the past 18 months.
Yeah, and also thanks again, Carol, for having us, and Ian here. So yeah, we see a big difference, definitely. We don't as much really change our offering, but we do change aspects of our product offering that now are really far more topical. Like desk booking, like parking, all those elements that are far more topical to have and to put in the hands of the end user. So we've seen that has really been a big change and a big move forward for us. And on the other hand as well, it is a different and a slight change of tack in communication and the messaging, because a lot of the real estate, what we've seen now, didn't really know what was going to happen, and we still don't, to be honest. It's a lot of qualitative elements there, not very much quantitative, but that's exactly now where we see this big push for digitalization, because it needs to be starting to be quantified. Mm-hmm. We can't have this huge asset class being driven by, on one hand, the quantification of the financial side, but only the qualification of what's actually happening in the workspace and workplace. Mm-hmm. And that's changing big time now.
Yeah, one of the things that I'm really trying to do over the past year or year and a half is, when we talk about data, get really specific. So in terms of buildings, can you tell us, first of all, who are your clients? What type of buildings are you currently deployed across?
It's a real mix, actually, a real mixture. I mean, looking at myself, I look after primarily the UK and Ireland, although I am looking to pick up some other countries in terms of the rest of the world, as we're seeing lots of different requirements come to us. But looking specifically around the UK and Ireland, the majority of the people we're speaking to are landlords, are landlord focused. That's not to say we don't also cater for corporates. We do both. The platform can do both landlord and corporates. And so what we're seeing a lot more of, if talking about specifics in terms of some of the data, some of the data has told us things like, from a user perspective, people are requiring, when they're going to the office, things like parking. And the reason for that, they want to maintain their own bubble, especially outside of locations like central London, where we all know it's very difficult to drive your car in central London in any case. But outside of that, where there's parking facilities on hand at the campus or the building, we're seeing a lot more requirements to have parking systems where individuals can book parking prior to arriving and know they're going to have something there and maintain that bubble between home and work and back again. And it's those kind of insights the data is helping us to push towards.
And in terms of occupancy, for your clients across the UK, because I think the UK is slightly ahead of Ireland in terms of opening up. You know, we've just started to return to the office, but actually most major employers have either done a very slow and cautious phased return to the office, or actually they've put it out until January 2022. So where are you in terms of your clients? Do you have any idea about what percentage occupancy they're at?
It's a really mixed bag across the board, in all honesty. I mean, without putting any names in place, we saw the beginning of this year, we thought it was going to be maybe a Q2, Q3 in terms of people coming back into the office. And we thought numbers would be maybe around 50, 60%. What we're finding in some locations is that's now being kicked into Q1 of next year in terms of the real drive. And also the occupancy figures that we're seeing, they can range from as little as 20%, 25%, going all the way to around 45, 50%. So in general, there has been a pushback in terms of the real, return to work drive. And that I think is coupled with the government policies that are in place and so on and so forth. But also we're seeing that some people are, even though, the last time we spoke, the conversation piece was this, this technology experiential platform, it sounds interesting, but what can it do? Now it's a case of, we need you. We don't know exactly what we need. Can you help us and help with that conversation? But it's what we're finding. It's still a protracted conversation, takes a long time. And so those extra timescales, IQ1 for the real return to work, is what we're seeing more and more of in terms of clients kicking that can slightly further down the track.
Yeah. And what I would say in that, what has been important, at least what we see on our side, is because we focus on both. Of course, that isn't really focus, but we believe in the value of both, meaning corporate and landlords. We're able to advise on where that stands, and also because we have a global footprint, that we have a few, especially from the corporate point of view, customers like a Shell or Finastra, which is a big fintech company, that we organize and facilitate their return to work on a global level. We're able to give our landlord customers and potential customers in that quite some advice and consultancy of what their tenants are looking for, and what the actual users, the people who want to return safely, but also now in this hybrid setup, because we've in a lot of countries already moved from return to work to hybrid working, and what will that look like? Mm-hmm. And we're able to already advise based on the big kind of companies that are our customers, who have strategies to make this central in their way of working in the future.
Mm-hmm. And Ian, can you expand on that a little? Because again, this is something that here in Ireland, occupiers need to learn from. So in terms of implementing hybrid working, you mentioned there about desk booking, and even prior to COVID, we were seeing this move from traditional offices and traditional open plan offices with assigned desks to more of a desk booking. Mm-hmm. Has COVID strengthened that in either direction? Are people happy to randomly take a desk, or are they now going more for assigned, or is it a case that your booking system has to incorporate an element of deep cleaning or specialist cleaning? Like, how are you navigating that?
Yeah, and that's what we're actually seeing now, is that it's still a combination of both, but an extra in this, I think, is knowing, and it's quite rational really once you think about it, is when do you want to be in the office? You want to be in the office when you think you can be the most productive, and what does that facilitate? Certain rooms or desks needed, but also certain colleagues and or even friends in the workplace. And that combination now is what we're seeing is becoming very important. And that's where we've upped the ante on our product, and what we can actually deliver is a colleague finder linked to desk, linked to locations, so you can start sitting together to be more productive, or know that your colleague, that Carol, you are in the office, and that therefore I will come to the office and book a meeting together. So all of these combinations are becoming far more important, and we do see clear indications that these functionalities, as we call them, these solutions, are the ones to move forward. But there will definitely be, we see that now, that the occupancy will definitely be different. It will be impacted, but to be honest, as you referred to as well a bit, we're already seeing this in the emergence of flexible spaces. That it wasn't only one main location, and the flexible spaces like Spaces, WeWork, etc. They were biting quite a large bit off of the market, but now we're seeing that part is also being brought in the own home. And again, that has a lot of difference and a lot of it's quite interesting insight. It depends on which cities you're in. If you have high rent, like for example Dublin, it's a lot of younger people especially don't have the kind of floor space to have a separate room to work in. So you see the flight more to the country or outside the cities, but you also see that the younger generations, or maybe even worse really, but less higher salaried, which quite often goes hand in hand with being younger, are having more difficulty in actually having this hybrid setup, even though they're the ones that are looking for it. So we'll definitely see a bit of a dilemma there, and what's important is being able to know and to being able to base that on a bit of not only the qualification but also the quantification, and be proactive in the approach.
You know, that's a really interesting one, because I was thinking about, you know, the days that you might need to travel to the office. And for our own setup here, we actually opened a rural office at the other side of the country. So to support our Dublin office, we now have a Galway office, but it's a rural Galway office, not a Galway city. But, you know, it's interesting, actually. I hadn't considered that as you're booking time into the office, that you would need to coordinate with specific team members, you know, because we're so used to now collaborating online that you forget that there is that need. So if you want to be in the office, that there is that need for collaboration. Is that something that your app could do prior to COVID?
I'm happy to take that one. Yeah, it's an evolution. What we as Ian said, we looked at what our clients were asking. We looked at the way they're working today, and then we make another iteration of that feature to develop it. And so, as Ian mentioned, the fact that knowing that, you know, today, if I want to go into the office next week, rather than having to do a round robin and ask everyone, if I can just simply go on the app, see the day that I want to go in, say I want to be next to Carol because I need to work with you on a specific project, and then book the seat next to you. Then I turn up, where we can corroborate in terms of whatever work product we need to produce, and then we'll return back to the home environment. And even things like, and just to throw one at you, from conversations we're having with clients, you know, the current situation or the current modus operandi of booking a meeting. If you think if there were 20 of us, and some of us, you know, work for Office Apps, some of us work for another company, some of you want to be dialing to the meeting from home, and some want to be physically there. We're already starting to think as a company how to put a feature or a product that will allow someone to book that meeting, and then individuals to say whether they want to be working from home or physically coming into the meeting, and then for it to select the right meeting room size according to the people that are going to be coming in, and do all of that in a very easy, succinct way that again helps with that whole experiential piece that we really focus on.
Yeah, that hybrid mix of meetings as well, I think, is something that we're definitely going to have to work on to get the balance right, in terms of not just physically who's there and who can connect in by technology, but also actually making sure that people who aren't physically in the room aren't getting the short end of the straw. You know, as always happens on any committee, if you're not in the room to say no, you're an automatic yes. So there's a lot of things that we need to work out there. But before we started the interview, Iken, you and I just were speaking about maybe, because I'm really interested to know the inquiries that you're getting from Ireland. And I want to know, from a selfish point of view, I want to know where the industry is at, because I've been very forthcoming by saying that, you know, we were, as a country, our industry was slow to adapt. The last 18 months has been transformative in so many ways, and many of them positive in terms of digital adoption. But in terms of the inquiries you're getting from Ireland, without being indiscreet, without talking out of school, what do commercial building owners and operators think that they need?
Okay, I mean, that's a twofold question. So looking at it, first of all, the majority of inquiries are coming from what we classify as the landlords. The landlord as community have kind of woken up to the fact that they need to get in on this opportunity, as I see it. And when they are engaging with us, and we're being involved in a lot more RFPs where it's a formal tender process with lots of different platforms, a big part of it is really, you can tell as part of the RFP, is getting them educated as to what we can do, because there's still a gap there in terms of giving them an overview of what our platform can really do. And then once that understanding is there, the types of things we're seeing asked for a lot of are really focused around helping the tenant bed into that building or that ecosystem or that campus with things like access control to get into the building in a simple and easy way. But it's also a great way of getting great adoption and engagement them, because if you have to download the platform to get into the building, we're going to have lots of users, and also lots of facilities. Like there's lots of integrations we're doing with order to desk or order to meeting room food facilities, and so lots of different landlords are really pushing that to the forefront as a differentiator. And then also the big one is community. Making a really sticky community platform with lots of cool things on there, whether it's coupons where you can get stuff for free, whether it's events where you can pay for events, or it can be free events, and really see who's going in terms of the community, and so on and so forth. So creating a really sticky environment that people want to actually jump into and utilize, that helps them work, rest, and play, to use a Mars adjective.
Okay, actually, there's a lot of what you've said there, and I have a couple of different inquiries around that. One, from I suppose, to benefit the startups listening. You mentioned there about an education process that has to happen with clients, that there is a gap maybe in the understanding of the industry as to what your offering is. So from a communications point of view, one of the things that I've seen not just startups but technology providers do is when the offering is too broad, people fail to understand it. And has that, through your app, it sounds quite broad. So in terms of communicating the core messaging, is that difficult? Do you need to break that down on a client by client basis based on really what their immediate needs are?
I'll answer this first, and Ian, if you want to jump in as well. We use the strap line to make it very simple, the single source of truth. And that really resonates with clients in terms of lots of different silos of data points that aren't talking to each other, and it's very hard to make sense of when you look at them individually. We are that spine that comes into the building that you can connect loads of these different things, whether it's access control, whether it's parking, whether it's a community. And having all of that in one place really helps understand from a data perspective how best to move that building forward in terms of some of the facilities and some of the experiences you're trying to create for, whether it be employees or tenants.
I love that you're using the term single source of truth, because that's actually that is the basis for the Unisu platform, and that's actually where the name comes from. Because it is a single source of truth for essentially for the technology feeding into the built environment. So actually, I think that's a really good core place to be starting from. The other thing you just mentioned there in terms of, people having to download the platform. In order, your app, does it need to be downloaded? Can it be accessed through web app? Does it? Do all users need to download it on their phones?
To get the most out of what we know, first of all, we look at the data to say how are users interacting with our platform. Most are interacting it via a handheld device. That's just one of the facts there. And so really to get the best out of it, we try to look at it from the point of view as the point of least resistance. So if you're physically coming into a building today using a plaque to swipe in and out, all we're saying is, and we'll provide we've got a whole team that will help with the digital launch into any particular building. We even have events and competitions to incentivize people to want to actually download the platform. So it's as painless as possible in terms of actually doing that. And then once you're on there, as I've mentioned, with all these, some of these great things that we're doing, whether it's events, being able to understand and even from the point of view of campuses where you've got different businesses on there, all of a sudden being able to cross-pollinize and know your different people that weren't working with you, to understand who they are, what they're doing, and really create a much more cohesive community. It's almost like a little thing as a hurdle at the beginning to get over, to get all the benefits at the back end.
Do you think this industry does community well?
I'll definitely take that one. I don't think we do as an industry. It's seen as a bit of a necessity, and on its own, and that's what we've seen because Carol, you're absolutely right. We are really the opposite of focused, but in a good way. But what that means, for example, for us. And that's where we've always taken not a short-term perspective, but a longer-term perspective on this. What it means, for example, that the community cannot live without an access control or a room booking, or now where you see a colleague finder or desk booking or health and safety check-ins, all the things that are very relevant now. And in the next steps forward, it will be ESG elements as well. But all of that feeds together to work as one and really makes sure that it's used a lot. So the adoption engagement is very high on our platform. And therefore, we can also start being the more consultative seller or consultative / advisor to our customers. So just coming right back to your answer or to your question there, I don't think we do community well because it can't work on its own.
And also to kind of second what Ian said, what I'm seeing in terms of requirements or requests from clients actually is, can you offer much more support in terms of your teams with things like sourcing events for us and curating even the actual, even the images that potentially would be pushed onto the platform. We're seeing a lot more of that being asked because you're absolutely right. The community as a whole, the sector as a whole, isn't fantastic at doing the community piece.
Yeah, and do you know what? I think it's very telling, probably of the pandemic, that it's taken us 20 minutes to actually touch on the subject of ESG, because I would imagine prior to COVID, that was one of the strongest drivers.
Definitely, and it still is. It still is a very strong driver with the bigger both corporate customers and landlord customers. Of course, there's a big push from all their institutional lenders to do this in the next years / decennia. So there are, and I think that really is this to get COVID together with the underlying push on ESG, where you can also use community. But it's not only about building in a more efficient way. It's also about communicating of what you've done and being able to influence or the behavior around in the workspace around being more environmentally social. The governance is a little bit more difficult, but the environmental and social are definitely elements where Office app is also being used as a driver, especially on the end user point of view. And then together with hybrid working, I think there are some hugely huge macro trends driving us forward on this.
Well, talk us through some of those trends.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I think having named two already with hybrid working, as I said before, just maybe revisiting. It's not about mostly in most countries at the moment. It's not about return to work anymore. It's already gone to hybrid working. So that one will be a big push, especially now on the corporate side, getting your employees back to work / the war on talent, which is bigger than ever. Which also has a link to ESG. A lot of the very mindful new workforce coming in, where you do have to find a good position on your, especially environmental, but also social setup. But that pushing that forward and the landlord following in that as well, because the landlord now has to understand more and more of what's happening in this workspace and not depend as much on the property managers / third parties. So that's where we see a lot of, and that was already starting, a lot of direct a direct relationship with the data that we offer, and then therefore how landlords and their tenants are pushing this forward, and ESG, of course, as well. And we're at the beginning of that. And those two elements really are now the ESG on, I'd say, a slightly longer term perspective, but the hybrid working is moving into that as one total to really accelerate the digitalization of the real estate.
You know, there's a lot in what you've mentioned there, and one of the things that you talk about is the importance of landlords understanding what a changed workplace is going to look like. But that seems like an incredibly tall order right now, when frankly there's just no way of knowing what how humans are going to respond. We've already seen over the past 18 months that surveys that were carried out maybe quarterly, that there was this huge appreciation of working from home, and then there was this almost resistance to working from home. And so we're still at the stage where actually when we return to the office or to the workplaces, how safe are people going to feel? Because I don't know what it's like internationally, but in Ireland, employers are not allowed to ask if employees are vaccinated. So therefore they have to work on the assumption that they are not, even though close to 90% of the adult population now is doubly vaccinated. Employers have to take the position that they're not, because they're not allowed to ask, and they have to default. So how is that working internationally?
So here as well, and I think at the moment and for the short term, it will very much be qualitative. How do people feel? And I think that is a very important aspect of that, because it will be quite psychological. It could be quite psychological as well. But what now we're seeing, because of the introduction of platforms like ourselves, it's going off only the qualification to more of the quantification as well. And this will take a bit of time, but now we are ready for some of our customers. What one is, for example, Colliers in Poland, where we're helping them to plan how that return of work will work, based on the amount of bookings that will be done, not only on desk booking, but also on the access, on room booking, all bringing this all together to then predict what that will look like and where that will level off. And I think as well, which will have even more impact, is when. Meaning not exactly when everyone will be back, but when are the different services, the different functionalities, meeting room desks being used, Monday versus Tuesday, Tuesday versus Friday. And we're getting a lot of information now on that, a lot of data on that, to really be able to predict quantitatively, so securely, on how that return to work will be. So this, I think, now will be the next big step in the next 6 months, where everyone is looking to quantify it, and then we'll be stepping away from a lot of I think it'll be 30%, or I think it'll be 70%, and we'll have a lot more numbers in the market.
Yeah, thank you. Kind of before we finish up, I'd love to just know your opinion there in terms of trust and technology, because the real estate has a trust problem. It's had a technology problem. Could it be that technology could actually become one of the tools for rebuilding trust for the industry and its users?
It's a very good question you pose, actually, a really good one. And I've worked in property for the last, in one guise or another, maybe for 12, 13 years now. And when I first came in, even up to now, until recently, my whole outlook on properties, it's quite opaque as an industry. It's almost like a dark art. How do they quantify buildings in RICS in terms of pounds and pence, and why, and so on? And something goes at this end, it comes out completely different at the other. And I do think there is a place for technology, and it absolutely can, and in its many different guises, whether it's blockchain, where you can fully understand all the different adaptations of a building, and being in one place, it's incorruptible, so it will help with the buying and selling process. Whether it's looking at quantitative data rather than the asset manager who kind of on a Friday will do this after speaking with just one individual for the company, having all that data that fully tells you what's happening, why, and will allow you to make the informed decision as to what you need to change. before it was very based on a person's understanding. I think now it can be much more precise and based on quantitative data. And I think that can only help with creating much more trust within the property industry.
Well, that and maybe getting some case studies that can really inspire the industry as well. And I think that's something that maybe the proptech sector haven't been great at doing and need to do an awful lot more. So it's something that I hope, if you guys are undertaking projects like that are you doing that? Are you actually releasing case studies maybe of buildings that you're operating in?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we've got some great case studies. You may have even heard of, to throw one in the mix, and I'll give you one here. You've been asking for names. We're working with a developer, a middle cap, on a great project in Southwark. And, that has got some rave reviews in terms of the Europe's smartest building, certified by SBC. And, it really helps in terms of positioning that building compared to others in that geographical location of London. And even with things like the leasing program, with the agents able to potentially show potential tenants of the building how this particular building has been flooded with technology and some of those benefits, it drew in a much more technological focused type of tenant base, because they've started to get leases signed, and also it helped with in terms of reducing the leasing cycle in terms of getting someone interested in signing. And then lastly, it even helps, this particular landlord took the view of flooding the whole, whether it's the landlord space or the client space, the whole ecosystem. So the potential tenant would turn up and say, okay, this is what I get as part of the lease, including this platform that is wired to allow me to book and X, Y, and Z. And what we were seeing is even helping with things like service charge costs and so on, in terms of embedding that in there. So it's a great story. We're telling it.
Excellent.
Hopefully,
and I think that we need to be telling this story louder. We need to be sharing it wider.
Definitely.
And that's certainly something that we'd like to do. And we might get onto that another day. But for now, thank you both. That was Ian Thompson and Ikenna Nweke of Commercial Tenant Experience Office App. That's it from us this week. Thank you for listening into Property Matters on Dublin South FM. You can get in touch with the show on social media at iPropertyRadio or by emailing hello@iPropertyRadio.com. Also, my thanks to Peter Rice on sound. We're back at the same time next week. From Brian Fox and myself, Carol Talon. Stay safe.